there's no question in my mind, this is the Lord who's speaking to me at this moment. And it was, stop, pick them up. I literally hit the brakes and came to a stop about 30 feet away from them. And when I told her that I had no intention of stopping until the Lord told me I had to, she just dissolved in tears. I said, God heard your prayers.
What would you say to the person who hears that and goes, wow, those stories are incredible. I wish I could have an experience like that with God?
Am I open inside my heart to let it get past that threshold that I have that says there's no way that this can happen?
How do you discern God's voice? As part of my exploration of how encounters with God can anchor our faith during doubt, I interviewed several of my personal mentors and asked them, how do you recognize God's voice? Each conversation included stories of God speaking and tons of wisdom on how we can all learn to discern God's voice. This process has been a real journey of adventurous truth seeking, and you're invited to come along. Over the next few weeks, clips from each of those conversations will be released here, but if you want to listen to the full conversations, which are so good, you can do that on the newly launched Truth Snack podcast. Links in the description below. Okay. Let's jump into this conversation with my dear friend, Paul.
When I say discerning God's voice, what does that even mean to you, Paul?
Well, what it means to me is that it's the statement by Jesus himself that my sheep know my voice. In other words, those who follow me, those who are under my care, literally my loving protection, my loving care, my loving faithfulness in relationship with me, they know my voice. And I think the parallel there for me is that it means that it's a growing experience. It's something where I learn to be able to grow in my understanding of what that voice sounds like. And all the other narrators that sometimes come into my head, his voice is one that is unique and distinct.
How is it distinct then? Because that's part of the discernment piece, is you're discerning that it's distinct. How do you distinguish it?
I firmly believe that in order to be able to know that voice and discern it well, you also have to be in the scriptures. You have to be able to have that as your background grid work that you run things through. The uniqueness for me, though, has been that, and this is where I think it's more existential than it is anything else, but the uniqueness for me has been the fact that when I've heard that voice, I realize it's unlike any other. I don't know that I've ever heard audible words, such as what I'm doing with you right now.
Sure.
But at the same time, those words have come in a sense that they have been clear and under such a strong impression. There's no question in my mind that this is the Lord who's speaking to me at this moment. So for me, the existential part of my relationship with Christ in my journey with the empowerment of the Holy Spirit is that he does speak. He wants me to hear his voice. Now, let me share something that is maybe a little bit more out there in terms of that. I do a lot of work with First Nations youth up in northern Quebec, and it's about a 10 or 11 hour drive up there. And so as I'm leaving the community, I get about halfway to the main road, and I see a person on the side of the road standing there. They look intoxicated, and then they're kind of just walking along, and they kind of just turn around and put their hand out and kind of just wave their thumb a little bit, looking for a ride. And I thought to myself, no, I don't think so. And I could tell too that it was a female. And I thought, no, definitely not. That's not the way I work. There's protocols for this sort of thing. Paul followed the protocols, give them birth, go around them. As I'm approaching them, I'm probably maybe 200 feet away from them. I sense the Lord just saying to me, stop, pick them up. And I thought, no, that's not possible. Everything is against me doing this. All things are against me doing this. My own board wouldn't be happy with me doing this. I can't do this. Right away again, as if the Lord was almost yelling at me, and not in an angry voice, but in a commanding voice. And it was, stop, pick them up. I literally hit the brakes and came to a stop about 30 feet away from them. I still remember to this day, she came to the car, she came to the vehicle, she opened the door, she looked inside, and all she said was, oh my goodness, she cursed, it's a white man. And I thought to myself, okay, don't have any idea where we're going, why you needed a ride, nothing. As we're driving down that road, she starts to slowly talk and open up about things. She said, there were 3 other people who passed me by this morning and didn't pick me up. 2 of them were friends and 1 was a family member. and none of them would stop and pick me up. And she said, I was at a point in the road where I was looking down and I realized I could make my way to the lake. And I thought to myself, I'm going into the lake, I'm going to drown myself. And that because nobody cares. God, if the next person who stops doesn't pick me up, I'm going into the lake, I'm going to kill myself. And she said, and then you stopped. That was probably one of the most powerful moments for me in my life, realizing that, Paul, you always have to be open as to why I am doing things in your life. And when I told her that I had no intention of stopping until the Lord told me I had to, she was blown away. She just dissolved in tears and couldn't believe it. And I said, God heard your prayers. God heard your prayers. And he heard you say to him, if the next person doesn't stop, Lord, I'm going to take my life. And I said, and the Lord made it absolutely clear to me that I had no option. I needed to stop. So, Matt, I have known that voice of God, the voice of Jesus speaking to me as one of the people that he lovingly cares for.
What would you say to the person who hears that and goes, wow, those stories are incredible. I wish I could have an experience like that with God?
I would say two things to them. The first is this: it doesn't happen all the time to me. And so those stories are interspersed by long periods of time. These were things I learned in my younger years. But the first was that I spent too many of those years seeking the experience rather than the person. I wanted that visionary experience. I wanted that dream that was alive and real and powerful in my life. I wanted something that could move Joseph to suddenly go from I'm divorcing you to the fact that, man, I'm taking you home as my wife. This really is from God. I thought, boy, Lord, that would just be unbelievable. I had to realize something. Paul, you're not seeking the person, you're seeking the experience. And so part of me would say to people, what are you seeking? Are you truly seeking for you to be able to get to know them and for you to be transparent enough so that they can honestly get to know you? Because as much as we know that God is all-knowing, he still wants us to open up to him. Right away in the garden, even though he's omniscient, the first question he asks is, where are you? Where are you? He wants us to open up to him, because you can't trust him until you know him. But the most important thing is, and until you know him and until you really trust him, you won't even know what his voice sounds like. And so let's begin that process. How well do you know this person, Jesus, the historical person of the Gospels? How well do you know him? Not what you've been told about him and not what you've heard about him, but how well do you actually know him? And then as you begin to take those steps and work in intimacy with him that way, then you will hear his voice. And so my first step is to try and get them to be able to see Jesus for themselves.
Through reading, prayer, solitude,
reflection. So there's two sides to this. There is the outward side where they're moving towards him, and then there's the inward journey where they're moving deeper within themselves and also asking themselves, therefore, what are the things that may be obstructing or holding me back in this relationship?
So far this year in the videos I've made, I have talked about, like the barriers that we can put up. Is that what you meant by that? Was like kind of understanding your own heart and where you're able to receive and not? What did you mean by going deeper within yourself?
So by going deeper within myself, it means the fact that, let me try and see if I can break it down to a few different things here. The first is what is the woundedness that's in my own life that doesn't allow me to be able to receive? Because if I have a wounded area of my heart, the truth is I don't let anything come near that, because anytime it does, it takes a chance of getting hurt. When I'm in pain, that's the last place I want you to come close to. What's our greatest aversion towards seeking even medical help is the fact that they're going to have to touch that area. They have to deal with it. And in dealing with it, it can be painful. It will bring relief. It'll bring healing, but it's still going to be painful. What is it that is in there within my relationship or within myself that would inhibit me being able to receive from the Lord, for him to be able to speak into my life in a powerful way like that? The second thing in terms of going deep, though, we have to realize that all of us have been programmed religiously. All of us have. And so as a result, I have one of two things that can take place, not just one of two things, but these two major things that can take place. And one is that I just believe that there's no way that this can happen. The other one, though, is that I'm open to anything possibly happening, but I have no grid work to be able to tell myself whether or not it's trustworthy and whether or not it can be something I would really base my life on at this point. Take the example in Scripture in Acts, where Ananias is suddenly hearing from the voice of the Lord. I mean, absolutely clear. And you would presuppose from the passage, this is not the first time he's heard from the voice of the Lord, but he challenges it right away. Are you kidding? This is the guy who's been persecuting and killing your people. Why are you sending me there? Basically, like, am I to be the next martyr? Like, Lord, why are you sending me into this type of danger? I love the passage because of the fact that it's taught me a couple of things. Number one, there is a grid work inside of me sometimes where I will even listen to the voice of the Lord and think, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And then the Lord explains, this is why I'm doing this. Now go. Am I open inside my heart to let it get past that threshold that I have that says this can't be right? If it is reaffirmed twice, 3 times, then I can have much more trust in the fact that, Lord, okay, I'm not sure I understand completely why you're asking me to do this, but I'll do it. I'll pull over and stop and pick up this young lady, but I don't know why you're asking me to do this, because the honest truth is, Lord, all my protocols say you never do this.
If you made it this far, you'll probably enjoy the full conversation. Links below.